Daniel stood at the edge of the stone courtyard, his wrists bound with metal cuffs that hummed faintly. Above him stretched the alien sky, painted with strange shades of orange and green, colors that made the world feel alive yet hostile. Around him, armored figures closed in. They were tall, much taller than any human, each one covered in heavy plates of dark iron-like armor. Their helmets were shaped like beasts, with glowing slits for eyes. He had seen drawings of them in old research journals, but facing them here with their spears and rifles pointed at his chest was something else entirely. He felt the weight of fear pressing down on him. His heart pounded, yet his legs refused to bend. One of the guards stepped forward. His armor was engraved with markings, sharper and brighter than the rest. Clearly, this was the leader. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Kneel," the alien said, his language rough and deep. Yet Daniel, who had studied fragments of their tongue, understood it. The command was simple. The meaning was clear. Kneel and live a few more moments. Resist and die. The courtyard fell silent. Every guard around him tightened their grip on weapons. 100 golden eyes glowed in the dusk. Daniel swallowed. His mind raced. He thought about the warnings he had heard before coming here. Never resist them, never stand taller, never challenge their pride. But something inside him refused. He had not come across half the galaxy to kneel like a criminal. Instead, he spoke. Just one word. It was not in English, not even in modern alien speech. It was a word from their ancient tongue, one Daniel had discovered by accident while translating a fragment of their oldest texts back on Earth. He spoke it slowly, carefully, his voice trembling but clear. The effect was instant. The guards froze. Their glowing eyes widened behind the visors. Their weapons, raised and ready, began to lower one by one. The leader himself staggered a step backward, as if struck by an unseen force. Murmurs spread through the soldiers. They repeated the word, in whispers, as if afraid of it, as if it did not belong in the mouth of a human. Daniel blinked. He had no idea what just happened. He had spoken the word out of desperation, not out of courage. Yet here he stood, no longer the helpless prisoner, but someone the aliens regarded with confusion, maybe even fear. The leader growled, breaking the silence. "Who taught you this?" Daniel hesitated. The truth was dangerous, but lying felt worse. "I read it," he said in their language, broken but understandable. "In your ancient stone." The alien leader stared at him for a long time, then gestured sharply. The guards surrounded Daniel again, but this time their weapons pointed downward, not at his chest. "Bring him," the leader commanded. They marched him through massive gates of black stone. The fortress loomed above, carved into the side of a mountain. Its towers stretched high into the alien sky, banners of deep crimson swaying in the wind. Inside, everything was vast. Pillars carved with spirals, torches burning with blue fire, echoing chambers where every footstep sounded like thunder. Daniel kept his eyes open, studying everything. He was terrified, yes, but also curious. This was a civilization humans barely understood. Every stone here carried history, every symbol whispered secrets. They pushed him into a grand hall. The ceiling soared so high it vanished into shadow. At the far end stood a throne made of jagged crystal. Around it, alien nobles and officers whispered to one another. Their voices grew louder as they saw him, the human who had spoken that word. The leader who had captured him raised his hand for silence. This one said the forbidden name. The hall erupted in noise. Some shouted in disbelief, others in fear. One noble in silver armor pointed at Daniel and snarled, "Impossible! A human cannot know it. This is a trick." Daniel stood still. He did not kneel. His instincts told him that kneeling now would undo whatever strange power that single word had given him. The leader looked down at him. "Speak it again." Daniel hesitated, then repeated the word. His voice was steadier this time. The hall once more fell into stunned silence. The nobles exchanged uneasy looks. Some stepped back, as if the word carried danger. Others leaned forward, with sharp interest. The leader's golden eyes studied Daniel carefully. "Do you even know what it means?" Daniel's lips parted, but no answer came. The truth was, he didn't. He only knew the symbols he had found in an old manuscript on Earth. He knew it was ancient, but not the depth of its meaning. Still, he could not appear weak, so he said, "It means respect. It means strength. It means not kneeling." The aliens stared at him. Some laughed bitterly, but others looked unsettled. The leader tilted his head. "Perhaps you do not understand, but the fact that you spoke it, that cannot be ignored." He turned to the others. "Take him to the inner chambers. He will be questioned further. He may not be what he seems." The guards seized Daniel by the arms and pulled him away. Yet, even as they did, none raised their weapons at him. None dared treat him like a common prisoner. The word had changed everything. As they dragged him through twisting corridors lit by alien fire, Daniel's mind spun. What had he said? Why did it matter so much? He remembered the first time he saw the word, on a cracked tablet shipped to Earth from a secret dig site. The researchers had dismissed it as ceremonial, meaningless, but Daniel had been obsessed with languages since childhood. He had traced the curves, compared them with other fragments, and finally guessed its sound. Now, here he was, standing, in the heart of the very civilization it belonged to, and the word had saved his life. In the chamber where they locked him, Daniel sat on a stone bench, breathing hard. The cuffs around his wrists were finally removed, though guards stood watch outside. He rubbed his arms and looked at the carvings on the walls. They were filled with more ancient marks, spirals, runes, strange depictions of star-born figures. One carving in particular caught his eye. It showed an alien kneeling before a figure not of their kind. The figure had no clear features, but its smaller build reminded him of a human. Daniel's heart skipped. Could it be? Had this prophecy existed for centuries, waiting for someone like him? The door clanged open. A young alien guard entered, smaller than the others, his armor less decorated. He looked nervous as he approached Daniel. "You should not have spoken it," the guard whispered. "But you were brave. That word is for kings, for chosen ones, not for strangers." Daniel studied him. "Then why didn't they kill me?" The guard hesitated, then lowered his head. "Because prophecy says one day, a stranger will speak it, and when he does, change will come." Daniel sat back, stunned. He had walked into death, and instead, he had stepped into a legend. The fortress outside was alive with whispers. Soldiers spoke of the human who said the word. Some were afraid, some angry, others hopeful. For the first time in their long rule, something had shaken their certainty. And Daniel, alone in his chamber, realized something important. He had no way back to Earth yet. No allies here. But he had something stronger than weapons or power. He had a word that could bend the will of an empire. Daniel woke to the sound of the fortress walls groaning with movement. The chamber where they had placed him was lit by a pale blue flame burning in a metal bowl. The fire gave no smoke, but its glow painted the carved walls with eerie shadows. He had barely slept. His mind refused to rest, replaying again and again the moment in the courtyard when he had spoken that word. The door opened with a low creak, and 2 guards entered. Their armor clinked as they moved, and their eyes glowed faintly behind their masks. Without speaking, they motioned for him to stand. Daniel obeyed, though his body ached from the night spent on stone. They escorted him through twisting corridors, up tall stairways, and into another vast chamber. This one was brighter, filled with a golden light that streamed through narrow windows cut into the mountain rock. At the center stood a circular table carved from a single piece of crystal. Around it sat alien nobles, their armor polished, and their robes woven with patterns that shimmered when they moved. The leader from before was there too, standing near the table. His sharp eyes locked on Daniel the moment he entered. "This is the human," the leader said. His voice carried across the hall like a heavy drumbeat. The one who spoke the forbidden word. The nobles shifted in their seats. Some stared at Daniel with curiosity, others with open hostility. One, a tall figure draped in silver robes, leaned forward. Let him say it again. I wish to hear it with my own ears. Daniel felt their eyes pressing against him like spears. He swallowed, then spoke the word again, letting it echo through the chamber. The sound seemed to linger in the air longer than it should have, as if the stone itself remembered it. The nobles murmured among themselves. The silver-robed one sat back, eyes wide. It is true. He knows it. Another noble slammed a fist against the table. This is dangerous. If he spreads that word, our soldiers will lose their faith. The order will break. The leader raised a hand to silence them. He turned his gaze to Daniel. Do you know what you said? Daniel hesitated. He remembered the carvings he had seen in the chamber walls last night, the image of a smaller figure standing while one of their kind knelt. He had guessed at the meaning, but he wasn't sure. He chose his words carefully. I know it carries respect. I know it is not spoken lightly. The leader's golden eyes narrowed. You know little. That word is older than this fortress, older than the clans that rule here. It is tied to a prophecy, one that says a stranger will speak it, and our people will face change. The hall grew silent. Daniel felt the weight of their stares. Some looked at him as if he were a savior. Others looked at him as if he were a disease. The leader gestured to him again. Where did you learn it? Daniel forced himself to stand tall. I found it in your history, carved into stone long buried. On Earth we study fragments of your kind. I studied the symbols. I learned them. The nobles whispered again. One muttered, Impossible. Humans cannot reach such knowledge. Another replied, And yet he has. The leader's voice rumbled, low. If you truly are the stranger of prophecy, then you must prove yourself. Words alone are not enough. Daniel's stomach tightened. Prove? How? The leader pointed to the crystal table. At its center was a flat stone covered in runes. This is the stone of oaths. Only those chosen may touch it and not be burned. You will place your hand upon it. The guards moved closer, spears at the ready. Daniel realized there was no choice. Slowly, he stepped forward. The stone glowed faintly, carved with deep lines that pulsed like veins. He reached out a trembling hand and pressed it against the surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the runes flared with light, bright and golden. Gasps filled the chamber. Daniel pulled his hand back in shock, but the glow remained, spreading across the table until it filled the whole hall with golden fire. The nobles leapt to their feet, shouting in disbelief. The prophecy, one cried. It is him. Others argued furiously. No, it cannot be. He is human. The leader watched, his face unreadable. Daniel stepped back, heart racing. He had no idea what he had just done, but it had convinced them even further. After the meeting, he was not returned to the cold chamber. Instead, he was taken to a guest room within the fortress. It was still stone, but the walls were decorated with banners and shelves filled with strange artifacts. A bed of woven fibers replaced the stone bench. For the first time since his capture, Daniel could sit in some comfort. As he sat, the young guard from before slipped inside. His armor rattled softly as he bowed his head. They speak of you across the fortress, the guard whispered. Some say you are the stranger of the prophecy. Others say you are a trick meant to divide us. Daniel rubbed his face. And what do you believe? The guard hesitated. I believe you were brave not to kneel. Our people respect that. But the word you spoke, it is dangerous. It will bring storms. Daniel leaned forward. What does it truly mean? The guard lowered his voice. It means rise. It means stand when all others fall. It is the word of defiance. It is said only by kings when they claim their throne. For you to say it, It shakes everything. Daniel sat in silence, absorbing this. Rise. It explained so much. The way the guards had lowered their weapons, the way the nobles had argued. It was not just a word. It was a challenge, a claim. The guard looked at him with uneasy eyes. You must be careful. There are those who will kill you to stop the prophecy. Already, the general plots against you. General? Daniel asked. The guard nodded. The one in dark crimson armor. He does not want change. He will see you as a threat. Daniel clenched his fists. He had no plan, no allies, yet he was now a piece in a game far larger than himself. But he also knew something important. Fear had nearly broken him in the courtyard, and speaking that word had saved him. Perhaps courage was the only weapon he had left. That evening, Daniel was brought again before the nobles, this time for a feast. Long tables were laid out with alien foods, meats that shimmered like crystal, fruits that glowed softly, drinks that steamed. Soldiers lined the hall, their armor gleaming. Daniel sat at the edge, aware of every stare fixed on him. Some looked at him with admiration, others with hate. He forced himself to eat carefully, not to show weakness. The general in crimson armor stood and raised his goblet. His voice rang through the hall. We welcome the human who speaks forbidden words. But I say this. Prophecy can be twisted. Words can be stolen. Do not trust too quickly. Some nobles nodded, others frowned. The room grew heavy with tension. Daniel met the general's gaze and did not look away. He remembered the guard's warning. He understood. This was no feast of welcome. It was a battlefield of words, and he knew the storm was only beginning. Daniel sat in silence long after the feast ended. The nobles had dispersed, their voices echoing faintly in the stone halls as they argued about him. Some whispered of prophecy, others of danger, and the general in crimson armor had left with a scowl carved deep into his face. The guards escorted Daniel back to his chamber. It was larger than before, but he felt no comfort. His thoughts turned over and over again to the word he had spoken, rise. A word of kings. A word of defiance. A word tied to a prophecy he barely understood. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, he dreamed of carvings, of alien symbols glowing like fire, of soldiers kneeling not to their own leaders, but to a smaller figure standing, tall among them. The figure had no face, yet Daniel somehow knew it was meant to be him. When he woke, the young guard stood by the door again. His name, Daniel had learned, was Kyle. You will be tested today, Kyle whispered. Daniel frowned. Tested? How? Kyle hesitated. The council has decided you must face the Chamber of Echoes. It is where we question truth. If you are truly tied to the prophecy, the chamber will not harm you. If not, the stone itself will reject you. Daniel's heart pounded. And if it rejects me? Kyle looked away. Then you will not leave it alive. The guards led him through winding passages until they reached a tall gate carved with spirals and runes. The doors opened with a groan, and Daniel stepped into the Chamber of Echoes. The room was circular, its walls lined with mirrors of polished stone. Torches of blue fire lit the chamber, casting endless reflections. In the center was a pedestal, with an orb of crystal. The air hummed, heavy with unseen power. The nobles stood on a balcony above, watching. The leader who had first captured Daniel stood with them, his golden eyes fixed on the chamber. Beside him was the crimson-armored general, his posture stiff and hostile. A voice boomed from above. Step forward, human. Place your hands on the orb of truth. Speak your name. If the chamber accepts you, the prophecy may be real. If not, it will end here. Daniel drew a slow breath. Every part of him screamed to turn back, but there was no escape. He stepped forward, his footsteps echoing against the stone, and placed his hands on the orb. It was cold, colder than ice, and as soon as he touched it, a vibration shivered through his bones. The chamber seemed to come alive. The mirrors rippled, and his reflection split into dozens, each one moving a little differently. He heard whispers, his own voice but not his own words. "You are nothing. You should kneel. You cannot rise." Daniel gritted his teeth. "My name is Daniel." The whispers grew louder, overlapping. "You are weak. You are small. You are a stranger among giants." He shut his eyes and forced himself to focus. He remembered the courtyard, the moment when he had refused to kneel, the shock in the guard's eyes, the strength in his voice when he spoke the word. He shouted, "I will not kneel." The orb blazed with golden light. The mirrors shattered with a deafening crack, shards falling like rain but dissolving before they touched the ground. The chamber shook as if the mountain itself had bowed. Daniel staggered back, his hands burning, but the orb's glow spread until it filled the entire chamber. Above, the nobles cried out in shock. Some cheered, others argued, and the general clenched his fists in fury. The leader's voice finally cut through the chaos. "It is decided. The chamber has accepted him." Daniel was led out of the chamber, his head spinning. His arms trembled, but he walked with his back straight. He was alive. More than alive, he had passed their test. Cale walked beside him, his voice low. "No outsider has ever survived the Chamber of Echoes. Even many of our own leaders fail. You—" He shook his head. "You are changing everything." Daniel stopped him with a look. "Tell me more about this prophecy. I need to know." Cale hesitated but then nodded. He led Daniel to a quieter hall, away from the ears of nobles and generals. On the wall hung an ancient tapestry, faded but still intact. It showed a battlefield, alien soldiers clashing, their weapons raised, and in the center stood a smaller figure, hand lifted while light spread out around them. "The prophecy says," Cale whispered, "that when our clans fall into endless war, a stranger from the stars will speak the word of kings. That stranger will not kneel, and their defiance will break our chains. Many fear this prophecy, for it means the old ways will end. But many also hope for it because our people are tired of war." Daniel studied the tapestry. "And you believe that stranger is me?" Cale's eyes glowed faintly. "The chamber accepted you. The orb glowed for you. The guard saw you stand when others kneel. If not you, then who?" Daniel rubbed his temples. He had never wanted to be anyone's savior. He was a linguist, a researcher, not a warrior or a prophet. But here, in this fortress carved into the mountain, he had no choice but to play the part they expected of him. That night, as the fortress settled into uneasy quiet, Daniel walked the halls under guard. He paused at carvings etched into the walls, tracing the symbols with his fingers. Many matched the fragments he had seen on Earth, but here they were whole, complete. One carving in particular drew his attention. It showed the word he had spoken, rise, etched in bold strokes above the image of a throne. Beneath it, alien warriors knelt, but not to one of their own. The figure on the throne was small, human-like. Daniel's breath caught. The prophecy was older than he imagined, older than their clans, older than their wars, and somehow humanity had been part of it all along. Behind him, Cale spoke softly. "Do you see now why the general fears you? If the people believe you are the one, his power will crumble. He will not let that happen. You must be ready." Daniel turned. "Ready for what?" Kyle's eyes darkened. "For betrayal. It will come sooner than you think." The following day, Daniel was brought again to the council chamber. This time, the nobles did not whisper in confusion. They argued openly, their voices sharp and divided. "He must be protected," one noble declared. "He is the stranger who will lead us to unity." "He must be destroyed," another snapped. "If the soldiers follow him, the clans will fall into chaos." The general's voice cut through like a blade. "Enough. This human is a danger. The chamber may have accepted him, but that proves nothing. Prophecies are lies told by the weak." Daniel stepped forward, surprising himself with the firmness in his tone. "If I am nothing, then why do your guards hesitate? Why did your weapons lower when I spoke one word? You fear me because you fear the truth. The council erupted again, half shouting for him, half against him. The leader raised his hand, and silence fell. His golden eyes burned into Daniel. Your presence has changed much already. Whether for good or ill, we shall see. That night Daniel sat in his chamber, staring at the tapestry Cale had shown him earlier. He felt the weight of destiny pressing down. He was no king, no warrior, but somehow he was caught in a storm that would decide the future of an entire people. Outside he heard the rumble of soldiers moving. The fortress felt restless, the air heavy with tension. Cale entered quietly, his voice urgent. The general gathers his men. He will strike soon. You must be careful. Daniel looked up. His fear was real, but so was his resolve. He had stood before their weapons once and refused to kneel. He could do it again, and if prophecy demanded he be the stranger who rises, then rise he would, no matter the cost. The fortress of stone and fire never truly slept, yet Daniel felt the tension in its walls more than ever. Soldiers walked the halls with heavy steps, their armor clanging like drums of war. Whispers followed him everywhere he went. Whispers of prophecy, of fear, of change. Some soldiers saluted him, hesitant but respectful. Others spat curses under their breath when they thought he could not hear. Cale, the young guard, stayed close. He never left Daniel's side unless forced to. His loyalty was quiet but firm, his glowing eyes always scanning the shadows. The general moves against you, Kyle whispered one night as they walked along a balcony that overlooked the valley. Alien banners flapped in the cold wind. He gathers men loyal only to him. If he cannot silence you with words, he will with steel. Daniel leaned on the railing, staring at the strange stars above. Why doesn't the leader stop him? Cale hesitated. The leader respects the old laws. He believes in tests and signs. He will not stop the general until betrayal is shown openly. By then, it may be too late. Daniel's chest tightened. He was no soldier, no warrior. Yet, somehow he had become the center of a battle that was not his own. Still, he could not walk away. Not now. The test came sooner than he expected. A feast was declared, grander than the last. The nobles filled the hall, their robes glittering, their voices sharp with debate. The leader sat in his high seat, silent and watchful. At his right stood the general in crimson armor, his posture straight, his eyes cold as stone. Daniel was brought in and seated at a place of honor, though he felt no honor in it. The food was laid out, the air filled with music from strange instruments, but beneath the beauty was a weight of dread. He could feel the trap tightening. Halfway through the feast, the general rose. His deep voice cut through the hall. This farce has gone on too long, he declared. This human plays at prophecy, but he is nothing. He is a trickster who steals sacred words. The nobles stirred, some nodding in agreement, others frowning. The leader raised a hand, but the general continued louder. If he is truly chosen, let him stand here before us all. Let him speak again and prove himself. If the chamber accepted him, then surely he has nothing to fear. The hall grew silent. All eyes turned to Daniel. Daniel's hands trembled under the table, but he forced himself to rise. His legs felt heavy, yet he stood tall. The memory of the courtyard burned in his mind, the moment he refused to kneel. He would not bend now. The general pointed at him. Kneel before us, human. Kneel, and admit you are no king, no chosen one. The words struck the hall like thunder. Soldiers shifted. Some grinned, expecting Daniel to fall to his knees. Others watched in tense silence. Daniel's heart pounded. He thought of Earth, of the cracked stone tablet he had studied, of the single word that had saved him. He took a step forward, his voice steady. No. He looked directly at the general, refusing to lower his gaze. I will not kneel. A ripple passed through the soldiers. Murmurs spread. The general snarled. Then speak your word, human. Show us this power you claim." Daniel drew in a deep breath. He spoke the sacred word, "Rise." The hall shivered. Many guards lowered their weapons again, just as they had in the courtyard. Nobles gasped, and whispers filled the air. But Daniel did not stop there. He remembered the carvings he had studied in the fortress halls, the fragments of phrases he had pieced together late at night. He added a second line, his voice echoing, "Rise and lead, for the chains are broken." The effect was explosive. Soldiers stepped back, stunned. Nobles shouted in disbelief. The glow of the torches flickered as if even the flames trembled. At the words, the general roared in fury. "Lies! He twists our history." He drew his blade, long and curved, its edge glinting in the firelight. "If prophecy favors him, then let it save him now." Chaos erupted. Half the guards raised weapons toward Daniel, following the general. The other half hesitated, their loyalty torn between tradition and the power of the word they had just heard. Cale leapt to Daniel's side, sword drawn. "Stay behind me!" he shouted. Daniel's pulse thundered. He had no weapon, no armor, yet he refused to kneel. He stood tall, his voice ringing out. "You fear me because you fear change, but your people deserve more than endless war." Some guards faltered, lowering their weapons. Others joined the general, eyes burning with anger. The hall became a battlefield of words and wills before a single strike was even made. The leader finally rose from his high seat. His golden eyes burned with authority. "Enough," he thundered. His voice shook the hall. "This has gone too far," but the general ignored him. With a roar, he charged at Daniel, blade raised. Cale met him with steel, their weapons clashing, in sparks. The hall exploded into movement, guards fighting guards, nobles fleeing, torches falling from their stands. The prophecy had torn the fortress in two. Daniel stumbled back, heart pounding, as Cale fought to hold the general at bay. The young guard moved with speed and skill, but the general's strength was overwhelming. Each blow rang like thunder, shaking the ground. "Go," Kyle shouted, straining under the weight of the general's strikes. "Find the leader. He is the only one who can stop this." Daniel hesitated, then ran toward the high seat. The leader stood there, unmoving, his eyes fixed on the chaos. "Tell them," Daniel shouted, his voice raw. "Tell them what the prophecy says. Stop this before your people destroy themselves." The leader's gaze shifted to him, unreadable. "You have forced our people to choose, human. There is no going back." Behind them, Cale cried out as the general's blade shattered his guard. Daniel spun, desperate, but before the killing blow could fall, half a dozen soldiers rushed forward, those who had lowered their weapons when Daniel spoke. They blocked the general, shouting, "The stranger is chosen, protect him!" The hall split into open battle. Steel clashed, voices roared, banners tore from the walls. Daniel stood frozen in the storm, his chest heaving. He had spoken only words, yet those words had lit a fire no weapon could contain. The leader finally raised his hand, his voice booming across the hall. "Enough!" The sound cut through the chaos. Soldiers froze mid-strike, breathing hard. The general glared, his blade dripping with sparks from battle. "This war ends here," the leader said. His eyes locked on Daniel. "The human has spoken. The word and the phrase. He is no longer a prisoner. He is part of our fate." The general roared in rage, but his soldiers hesitated, torn. The leader's authority still carried weight, though the cracks of rebellion were clear. Daniel stood, at the center of it all, trembling but unbroken. He had faced weapons, fury, betrayal, and still he had not knelt. For the first time he understood. This was no longer about survival. It was about destiny. That night the fortress lay in uneasy silence. The feast hall was scarred from battle, its banners torn, its stone floors marked by steel. The nobles whispered in corners. The soldiers kept their hands close to their weapons, and the general brooded in shadows, his eyes still burning with fury. Daniel sat in his chamber with Cale, beside him, both weary but alive. "You stood when even I thought you would fall," Cale said softly. You spoke not just a word but a command. Many now believe you are the one we have waited for." Daniel leaned against the wall, exhaustion pressing on him. "I don't know if I'm the one. I only know I cannot kneel." Kyle smiled faintly. "Sometimes that is enough to change everything." Outside, the alien sky burned with strange colors, the stars watching silently. Inside, a human's defiance had split an empire in two, and Daniel knew the final storm was still to come. The fortress walls felt heavier than stone as tension thickened in every corridor. The feast hall had become a scarred battlefield, and now silence followed every step Daniel took. Soldiers watched him with divided eyes, some filled with awe, others with open hate. The word he had spoken, the phrase he had dared to add, had cracked the fortress into two sides. Kale walked beside him, his armor scraped from the clash with the general. His voice was low but steady. "You cannot stop now. Too many have seen you stand, too many believe. If you falter, the general will use it to crush not only you, but those who follow you." Daniel nodded, though his heart raced. He had never wanted power. He had only wanted to understand languages, to study the fragments of history, yet here he stood, a stranger carrying the weight of prophecy. At dawn, the council was summoned again. The nobles gathered in the high chamber, their robes dark with worry. The leader sat in his throne of crystal, his golden eyes unreadable. The general stood to his right, crimson armor polished as if the battle had never touched him, but his eyes, hard and sharp, never left Daniel. The leader's voice filled the chamber. "The time has come to decide. The human has spoken words forbidden. He has survived the chamber, he has divided our people. We must choose now whether he is the stranger of prophecy or a danger to be ended." The nobles erupted into argument. Some shouted, "He must be protected." Others cried, "Kill him before his word spread further." Daniel stood in the center, feeling every eye on him. He clenched his fists and raised his voice. "You fear me because I am different. But I have done nothing but stand. I spoke a word your own ancestors carved in stone. If you destroy me, you destroy the prophecy your people have carried for centuries," the general sneered. "Prophecy is weakness. Our strength is in steel, not words. Enough of this. Let the human face me in trial. If he survives, let him be your savior. If he falls, then all this foolishness ends." The hall went silent. The trial of combat was sacred among their people. None could deny its result. The leader's golden eyes narrowed. At last he nodded. "So be it. A trial." The courtyard was prepared by midday. Soldiers lined the walls, their weapons raised but silent. Nobles stood on high balconies, their faces pale. The leader presided from his seat above, the sky behind him painted in harsh colors of green and orange. Daniel stood at the center of the courtyard, his heart pounding. He wore no armor, only simple cloth. A spear was placed in his hand, its weight unfamiliar. Across from him, the general strode forward in full crimson armor, his massive blade gleaming. "You will kneel before me, human," the general growled, "or I will break you before their eyes." Daniel tightened his grip on the spear. His hand shook, but his voice was steady. "I will not kneel." A roar rose from the crowd, some in support, others in anger. The leader raised his hand. "Begin." The general charged, blade sweeping like fire. Daniel barely rolled aside, the strike cracking the stone where he had stood. The force of it rattled his bones. He scrambled to his feet, gripping the spear with both hands. The general struck again and again, each blow heavier than the last. Daniel blocked once, the spear vibrating so violently he almost lost his grip. He stumbled back, breathing hard, sweat pouring down his face. The crowd murmured. Some shouted for him to give up. Others cried out for him to stand. Kale's voice rang from the wall. "Remember the word. Stand, Daniel." Daniel's chest burned. His body screamed to collapse, to kneel, to give in. But he forced himself upright. He planted his feet, raised his spear, and shouted the word. "Rise." The sound carried across the courtyard. The soldiers froze. The general hesitated, his blade mid-swing. The word thundered in their ears like a drum of history. Daniel lunged, his spear striking the general's chest. The armor absorbed the blow, but the force pushed the general back a step. Gasps echoed through the crowd. The general roared in fury. He swung his blade, knocking the spear from Daniel's hands. The weapon clattered across the stone. Daniel staggered, unarmed, as the general raised his sword for the final strike. But Daniel did not kneel. He stood tall, eyes locked on the general, voice ringing out. Your people are tired of war. Your soldiers lower their weapons when they hear the word. They do not follow you, they follow the prophecy. And I will not kneel to you, the general faltered. Around them, soldiers shifted uneasily. Many lowered their weapons once more. Their glowing eyes turned from the general to Daniel. The general snarled and struck down. But a dozen soldiers rushed forward, blocking his blade with their own. Enough, they cried. The human stands, the prophecy is real. The courtyard erupted into chaos. Soldiers fought soldiers, nobles shouted. The fortress itself shook with the roar of rebellion. The leader rose from his high seat, his voice booming like thunder. Silence. The fighting stopped at once. All eyes turned to him. His golden gaze swept over the courtyard, then fixed on Daniel. The human has spoken the word. He has stood against fear, against death, against power itself. He is not one of us, yet the prophecy has accepted him. The general has brought only division, while the stranger has brought courage. He lifted his arm. By the authority of the throne, I declare the prophecy fulfilled. The human will not kneel, he will stand. And with him, our people must rise, as well. The soldiers roared, their weapons clashing in salute. Many knelt, not to the general, but to Daniel. The general screamed in rage, but the soldiers held him down, stripping his blade from him. His rebellion had ended. Daniel stood at the center of it all, his body trembling, his chest heaving. He had survived not with strength of steel, but with the strength of defiance. That night the fortress was calmer than it had been in years. The nobles still argued, the soldiers still whispered, but a shift had begun. The prophecy was no longer just a story. It was alive, and a human had carried it. Daniel sat with Kale in his chamber, exhaustion pulling at him. I am no savior, he said quietly. I only refuse to kneel. Kale smiled faintly. Sometimes standing is enough. Daniel looked out the window at the alien sky, the stars burning brighter than ever. He had come here as a prisoner, as nothing more than a human far from home. Now he had changed the fate of an empire, not with weapons, not with armies, but with a single word. And as long as he lived, he knew he would never kneel.